in the temple and do all those things that those devotees can. But I understand the importance of Krishna consciousness, so I do the best I can. So I come to the temple, once a week, like that, and try to take part, try to do some chanting, try to do some reading. So why not focus on that part rather than, no, but I have to, get the knowledge and get a job and this and that, and I don't want to suffer like those devotees do. As if they're the only ones that have ever suffered. You know what I'm saying? I mean, have they ever read a newspaper? Right? Thank you. You read the newspaper. How many people there are enjoying themselves? Right? So that's the whole point. Why use that as the thing? That's what Varnashram's for. Grihastha means you have a job. You have something that makes money. Right? So that's what it means. But Brahmins also, you can have those that live in the temple and preach and teach and do those things. But it's understood, Brahmins don't have much. Right? Next they'll be saying Sudama Brahman was a bit of a loser because he didn't have anything. You know what I'm saying? So they have to think, is just because you want to feel confident in your position, don't do it based on false ego. Do it based on, I'm the soul, I'm servant of Krishna, I have this particular conditioning, so I'm going to be much more comfortable being a family person with this kind of facilities and this kind of arrangements. To do that, I need to have this education so I can get this kind of degrees, to get this kind of a job. Use your brain and plan. Right? Isn't it? So that's the whole thing. Why it's one or the other? Why you can't do the two? But you have to know that the secondary is in support of the primary. But if we try to make the secondary prominent, that's why we're in the material world. We're in the material world because we make the mechanics. It's just like when we think of Krishna and the cowherd boys, they take the cows out every day. But what's the importance of that? Right? They're going out, and then the cowherd boys and Krishna, then they can play and interact and everything like that. Yes? Do they not play and have fun with Krishna? Are they not Krishna conscious? Are the cowherd boys with Krishna Krishna conscious? It's not a trick question. Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, they are. Now, at the same time, are the cows being taken care of? Are they eating grass? Are they drinking water from the Jamuna?
Yes.
Okay. But where's their consciousness? They want to go out with Krishna. Okay? Now, what about Jatila and Abhimanyu and Govardhan Majumdar over at Javat? Their whole thing is how to make money. You understand? So they're just taking the secondary on its own, like the Yogic Brahmins. What's the purpose of the yajna? To worship Krishna. But they're just so worried about the yajna, they don't see that Krishna's right there. That's the mentality we're talking about here. Right? Yes, if that's what you have to do to maintain, go for it. And even though it takes up most of your time, that doesn't mean it's more important. Does that make sense? So, understand it's the quality of what you're doing, not the quantity. So yeah, you're at a job for 8 hours a day, and then you have going and coming, so 10 hours a day goes for your occupation. Right? So, in reality, 50 hours a week. But that doesn't mean it's more important than your japa. It's only taking 14 hours a week. Right? So the whole point is that it's used for maintenance, but maintenance isn't the main point. It's God consciousness is the main point. So how are they being God conscious in that environment? So instead of talking about rationalizing how it's so important to be like this and all that, why not talk about Krishna? When you're at work, talk about your job. When you're at home, talk about Krishna. So when you get together with devotees, don't talk about how important it is to have qualification and have a job. Why not talk about Krishna? On the other, you just do it. Does that make sense? So, okay. So, yes.
Okay. Sometimes when devotees come to Krishna consciousness and read like Srimad Bhagavatam, which is actually promoting the highest consciousness of pure devotional service, and read examples of very advanced devotees and like that, and they sometimes might be like, oh, this is too high and for me, and there is a kind of feeling of how can I do this, because this is really so far away from where I am. So how you relate that, when you say doubt or feeling that
how do we
might...
deal with that? Well, first of all, who's this I that they're talking about? When they say it's too far away from me, who's this me? You know? So if we're talking about the gross and subtle body, yeah, then it's very far away, because it's a different gross and subtle body. But as far as the soul, all the souls are of the same nature. It's the soul that's the same. It's the soul that has that equalness, not the gross and subtle bodies. Those are all different. No one conditioning is exactly the same as another. So to try to say they're all the same, then that doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? But the just like, okay, you have an apple and you have an orange. Okay, let's throw in a banana also. Okay, now as far as qualifying themselves as fruit, is there any difference in the fruitiness of an apple and orange, you know, or a banana or a pear? No. But are there differences in the nature of an orange or an apple or banana? Right? Can you make an apple pie? Yeah. Can you make an orange pie?
Yeah.
You take the orange and squeeze the juice and then bake a crust and pour in the juice and then put it in the oven and bake it. Is it going to happen?
Maybe.
Probably not.
Probably not, yes. Right, so those who don't know how to cook, they'll talk about the equalness of all the fruits and how each of one should be the same thing and like that. You understand? So the equalness is on the fruit level, not on the specifics. Because we're the soul, we're not the body. So we're not the body, that's true. But the body is the body. Right? We're not the car, but the car is the car. You understand? So, therefore then, we have to see is that the soul, its actual nature, is functioning like those devotees are doing. Their acharyas, they're setting, you know, the topmost example, but it's the nature that any soul can be engaged in that kind of activity. It may not be to that grandness, you know, we may not be like Priyavrata and be emperor of the world, you know, but the point is he's a manager who's engaging his position in Krishna's service. So we can also, in our position, engage in Krishna's service. We have to take the principle there, not the volume. When we take volume, then that's common. You know what I'm saying? It's just like how much glass in this city, right? There'll be cubic tons of it. How many diamonds? Right? So the whole point is we know is that there's quality, and so we do the best we can. So we're inspired by this. that make sense? So that's on the positive side. On the, how you say, another angle is that, and so do those who say these things, do they have any particular, personal interests or hobbies or anything like that? Or like sports or music or art or things like that. So do they not listen to music because they could not be like Beethoven or Mozart or, or whatever goes on around here, like how you say Iron Maiden or something. You know what I'm saying? So they can't get up there and bang their head like the other guys, so they won't even bother. You know what I'm saying?
No.
So that's the whole thing. Is on the mundane plane, they have their, those who they find inspiration from. Why wouldn't that apply in Krishna consciousness? Why is it there? Oh, I can't do that. Who told you to be emperor of the world? Just in your position, engage yourself in Krishna consciousness. So take the essence. Why take the external? Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes.
Actually, coming to the consciousness, if we compare the different life cycle of especially human beings, if we consider a 10 years boy, in extension to the same question what our Shamlila Prabhu has asked, that is more related to the devotees, but for common public who are really inclined towards Krishna consciousness, and if
so the devotee, I'm getting confused.
No.
Because he asked about the devotees who are not so inclined, and you're talking about the general public that is quite inclined.
Yeah. No, my question is more towards the human life cycle, where if a person who's born and he's been brought up in the Krishna consciousness from the start,
right,
since birth,
okay,
and similarly different phases at a 10 years or a 20 years or a 30 years aged or a 40 years aged person who is really wanting to be in Krishna consciousness,
or someone who's starting later.
Yeah, later.
Okay.
So if we consider people who are starting it late and with the conditioning they had till that point, with lot of conditioning, despite having this japa practice, like daily doing 16 rounds, if how they can improve, and is it really possible to come out of that conditioning and seriously follow Krishna consciousness?
Okay. Yes.
I don't know if I
Yeah. No, it says it. Yeah, it means yes. The whole point is that is this the only life they've ever had? This is it. Or there's been previous lives? You have no idea. You know anything about reincarnation?
Yes.
Samsara. So, has there been previous lives? Right? Okay. So, if a living entity's first coming in the material world, they come in as Lord Brahma. So if the guy you're talking about has 4 heads, like that, rides around on a swan, sits around, on a lotus, then you can maybe bring up, okay, he's a newbie, right? He hasn't done this before. Okay, so that means they've been around for millions or billions of lifetimes, right? So, therefore, if someone's born into Krishna consciousness, and someone comes 30 years later, what has that got to do with eternity?
Surely it makes, to my knowledge, it surely makes an impact, Maharaj.
That's there, but the point is that if it can remove the material consciousness that's been there since time immemorial, then what is 30 years? It adds a little bit more onto it.
Probably I'm talking about only this life.
Yeah, but the point is you have to know it all goes along with it. It all goes together. Because we're looking, first you have to catch the premise. Then we can talk detail. Otherwise we just talk detail, then we'll never get anywhere. It's just like this. Let us say you have 2 businessmen, right? One's talking about how selling cloth, and that's the real thing. The other one's saying no, selling cars. And they're arguing and fighting over this and that, the advantages and disadvantages, and why one's better than the other, and that's the real way to go for economics. Okay? Okay. Now let's say you have an actual mature businessman listening to this conversation. What's he going to think? He's going to think as, what are these idiots talking about? Right? The point is that you do business, you make profit. So the guy who's doing cloth, he can relate to cloth. He knows everything about cloth. He knows the manufacturers, he knows this, he knows that. He knows what people are into and everything like that. So for him, he sells cloth. And the other guy, he knows cars. So he sells cars. The point is, sell something more expensive than what you bought it for. That's business. That's it. That one sentence. That's how you do business. Right? So, therefore, you first have to accept the principle that someone's been in the material world since time immemorial. Right? What's 30 years? Okay? Now, on top of that, because they're aware of that, and they have that conditioning, yes, it will be a little bit more difficult. But the point is Krishna consciousness is about the soul, not about the conditioning. So this principle of identifying with the material, that we've always been doing. Right? So the point is, human being means that you have the opportunity to not think like that. The animals, they're just going to, the cat's going to be a cat. Right? Does that make sense? You probably have not had the experience of sitting there, cat walks up to you and wants to talk about discuss about the absolute truth. Does that make sense? So then it's a matter of being convinced about Krishna consciousness and doing the best you can. So because we're conditioned, yeah, it's going to be difficult. But everything's difficult. Right? Going to school, is that like easy? It's like falling, you say, I don't know what term you use here. Like it's a cakewalk. It's just, it's the easiest thing in the world. Going to school, passing your exams, getting 100%, and then with that going down, getting the best jobs. In fact, you walk down the street, all the CEOs walk out of all those buildings and come up to you and say, hey, here's my card, call me. Right? That's how it goes, right? Isn't it? And then he walks and that, and the car drives up, he gets in, it's all happening. It's a suit, yeah. Right? Or is that just the commercials? Right? It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen to anybody. You have to remember, the guy that's doing that, he's an actor. He's an actor. Of course he's smiling. He's getting $1,000 for doing that ad. Wouldn't you smile if all you had to do is spend 3 minutes and they'll give you $1,000? You'd be smiling.
And happy also. I'm happy too.
Yeah.
For 3 minutes.
Yeah. You understand? So of course he's smiling. So just understand, everything takes work. Right? And if we're going to look at this, then by your theory, it's going to be so hard to go into Krishna consciousness and that, so you have to be born that. What about getting married? So everyone should just, when they're born, they should be married. Right? And then just grow up and then it's cool, and they're easy with it. That's waiting all this time, and then when they're 20, 30, getting married, how much talk about, oh my God. Right? No? So the whole point is if you're interested in something, you do it. So no one's learning something new at 30 years old? So you mean it's true what they say that when you hit 30, you're over the hill and you might as well, pack it up and just go home? Life ends at 30. When you hit 29, go for it. That's your last year. When you hit 30, that's it, downhill. Right? Why, how old are you?
I'm 40.
40. Okay. Okay. But what is it? I don't know what they have here, but used to have a thing. Life begins at 40. Then I move it up to life begins at 50. As the guys get older, life begins at 60. Like that. I don't think they say life starts at 70. Probably most of those guys don't make it to 70.
Anyway, this theory is not there in India, probably.
Sorry?
In India, I think this theory is not there. Like life starts in 40 or 50. And
No, it's a Western concept, but we're not talking about Indian concepts, are we? Practicing Indians in India won't ask this question. They'll look at it, I spent my whole life, just going for, the knowledge and this, getting the degree. I went to IIT Mumbai, like this whole thing, and got the positions around the world, making money and all this. But I was never satisfied and all that. Then I came across the devotees, I came across Prabhupada's books, and I read that it made sense, and now I find some real meaning to life. That's what the guy in India will say. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So therefore, it's a point of Krishna consciousness senses the nature of the soul. It can be taken up at any time. Difficulties may be there, but it's difficult taking up anything at any time. Does that make sense?
I think I have to contemplate on this.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. That's the meaning of the Tato Brahma Jigyasa. Now you contemplate. Very good. So you contemplate. Oh, yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I was thinking about the difference between planning, in a Krishna. Is there planning in Krishna conscious way, or is all planning control? Like.
No, the point is what's the reason you're doing? What's the intent of doing something? That's how you decide. It's not the mechanics of what you're doing, it's the intent of what you're doing. Let's say, okay, there's some nice, little restaurant that you like going to for lunch. You find it really good. And so then you have, let's say, your, a good friend that you met and everything. I mean, a good friend came to town and all that. You invite him to this restaurant and all that, right? What's your purpose?
Association.
Right. Okay. Now let's say you're working in there, and at your job like that, you make some new contact like that. It could be very, very good for the business and all that. You invite them to that lunch, same menu. You sit in the same seat, same chair, same window. You understand? That's the intent. So is your planning so you control the universe, or is your planning so you can do something nice for Krishna? And of course you have the mix that you're planning to do something nice for Krishna by controlling the universe. That's karma Mr. Bhakti. So we're doing things to please Krishna. So planning is there. That's what you have to do. Why you wouldn't plan? Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
Yeah, in a lecture you spoke about compatibility and what happens when parents of different natures, the child gets a mixture of different. If the parents have different varnas,
yeah,
and the child gets maybe a varna different from their character, they can get a character.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
The point.
So could you define character, or the difference between mentality and character?
Means you have the guna and you have the karma, right? Means what activity you have the nature to do, and then what's the mentality that goes along with that. Okay, let us take, like, for example, let us say you have a doctor. Okay, so the doctor should be good at doctor stuff, right? Now, what kind of mood do you expect the doctor to have towards you as a patient?
Hopefully Brahminical.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what if he's just looking at it as just money? Right? But he's a good doctor.
Yeah.
He technically knows what to do. So does that match?
Yes.
Well, he will get the job done, but
Yes, but the point is that satisfying?
I don't think it would be.
No, and also that if you're looking at money, which patients do you take?
Yeah.
Right? You understand? So that's the meaning of the difference between the nature and the spirit. So the spirit you'll get from the father, the nature from the mother.
Oh, okay. But it's the vice versa from if it's a girl or a boy. It's
Girl would be the other way.
yeah.
See, in the Vedic, they always use the term he because that's the generic term. When you say he, that means everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, that means he, she, or it.
So that's why Bhagavatam is full of he everywhere.
It always does. It don't mention the soul. It's always he.
Yeah.
Talks about the living entity, he, because that's the generic term.
Okay.
So they don't worry about the, what is it?
Hen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They just use he, and it works for everybody.
Yeah. Right.
Because everybody's trying to control and enjoy, so it works.
Yeah. Right.
Right?
Thank you.
So that's the whole point. So then you have to find something that you can combine the two. If you contemplate and you see what's the nature of each, so what's the inclination, so how can you situate yourself that the two can be combined and it'll work nicely.
Okay.
Right? You know what I'm saying? So in other words, let's say you have the medical kind of thing like that, but at the same time you have the business thing, so go in for medical, manage the hospital.
Yeah.
Make the money. So you can relate to you want to work in the field of medicine, medicine, things like that, but administration, like that. You
Yeah,
find what
okay.
matches.
Wow.
Okay? And then it works. Then you're happy. Okay, we should probably,
Yeah. So, thank you very much for coming, and we should maybe have a kirtan because he has to leave for the airport. Finland first, tomorrow morning back to India. So this is back to the kingdom of God in Mayapur. So
say from the kingdom to the kingdom.
yeah, together with the king.
Yeah.
Yes. So this time, kings are supposed to be generous. So he brought a great gift this time.
Son is Bhakti Vidya Purna Maharaj ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Samaveta Bhaktivinda ki.
Jai.
Haribo.
Haribo.
So we have few minutes time, so you can